Well, hello and welcome to today's video masterclass where we'll be looking at probably one of the most significant and largest topics that you would have in the sector I work as the Head of Careers and Higher Education at Cardiff Sixth Form College, Cambridge. We're looking at the future career, so how to think about the next steps of your career journey. What would you as a student like to do, and how can school staff, parents, families, etc. help students along that journey? We'll also be thinking about which country and which degree students may want to choose, and how they can go about that thought process. So I'll be sharing some tips and strategies. Over the years, over the last decade or so, I've helped a huge number of students secure places at their best fit institutions all across the world. Yes, of course, in the UK, but also overseas as well, whether it's North America, so the US and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, all across Europe, to name but a few. Anyway, so I look forward to delivering this presentation. It should take, as all of the video masterclasses that we're producing, around about 10 to 20 minutes. So it's quite a huge task to be able to put this topic into a short period of time, but I'm up for the challenge and I'm looking forward to delivering this with you. So just to give you an overview of today's video masterclass in terms of what we'll be covering, I'll start with a brief introduction to myself and also to Cardiff Sixth Form College, Cambridge. I'll talk about how to choose the right subject at university. Of course, that's a rather significant topic. And I'll give some advice because we are not only looking at university options, but also speaking about the career. So I'll give some guidance and some suggestions on how to maintain that career trajectory, starting from a sixth form school student all the way up into the future years. And throughout today's masterclass, we'll also be talking about not just UK universities, but touching on a sense of a global university application approach. For example, within the industry, especially with UK-based schools, if students are applying to UK universities, because they are quite competitive and students naturally do aim quite often for Oxbridge, G5, Russell Group institutions, we call it the UCAS Plus model to diversify the portfolio, also applying to a couple of other countries, Hong Kong, for example, maybe the US. There are some students where they have the US, Hong Kong, and other destinations as their first choice. There are also a lot of students that we work with where they have maybe the UK as their first option, but in order to spread risk, diversify the portfolio, they apply to multiple destinations, see what's available, and then make a choice. Embedded again throughout what we'll be covering will be some tips for overall university application strategy to try and give you some resources and some ideas to help not only make an application, but make a successful and well-informed application. So, my name is Dominic Fuge, and I'm the Head of Careers and Higher Education at Cardiff Sixth Form College, Cambridge. This is now the fourth school where I've worked. So Cardiff Sixth Form College, the Cambridge branch, was established in 2022, and we specifically have a Year 12 and Year 13 cohort. So we don't, at least at the moment, offer GCSE, but the Cardiff branch do. And this is the third international boarding school where I've worked. So three of which of the four have been in a similar context in terms of helping students who come from a range of different nationalities and backgrounds and helping them get into universities all over the world. I do have a background in teaching, so one of my first roles in the education sector was to be a GCSE and A-level psychology teacher, and as I progressed throughout my own career, more and more I was interested in university application strategy and helping students build a roadmap in order to get into their best fit institutions. And over the years, I've moved into roles which involve line managing and developing strategies and supporting teams to implement hopefully a high level university application strategy and approach. And I studied myself in at three Russell Group institutions in the UK, Durham, where I did my undergraduate, Edinburgh for my master's, and Cambridge for another postgraduate qualification. Myself, since we're talking about careers and choosing subjects, I actually studied a range of subjects at university, quite a broad range you could say. I studied archaeology and anthropology as my undergraduate, then clinical psychology as the master's, and education also as another postgraduate option. And I think the fact that I've looked at many different subject areas, and of course those were the reasons for choosing that were mostly based on career trajectory. At one point I was looking at becoming a clinical psychologist. The fact that I was teaching psychology, I wanted to have a psychology master's. I was interested in human evolution, so it's more of a subject passion choice rather than a vocational option when I was choosing my undergraduate. So the fact that I have all of these different subjects and experiences, I think has really impacted my own approach as I help students choose what they want to study at university. Are we looking at it because you have a certain career goal in mind? Are we perhaps choosing the subject because there's a particular passion and you're using transferable skills, as hopefully we'll talk about in today's video masterclass. There is also an upcoming publication, so I've produced a book on UCAS personal statements, and actually we'll be using a couple of the figures and tables from that publication in today's video masterclass. So it was actually sometime last year where Trotman Education, the publishing company, approached me with this idea, and we worked together eventually to produce this book, which comes out in August 2025. And more recently, we've been able to put the logo of Cardiff Sixth Form College on the front of the book, just to show that collaboration. And of course, a lot of what we do at the college is written in the book. The book itself is rather cumulative, so it takes readers from the early stages of choosing the right university course, so of course very relevant for the purposes of today's video masterclass, developing your portfolio in terms of content to later write about in your application, so your supercurricular activities, for example, and how those help you find your best fit option in terms of institution and also in terms of subject area. The writing comes a little bit later, actually, towards more of the end of the application journey. So the book itself actually has 31 different tables and figures to help readers in a variety of ways. And this is table 4 from the book. And the reason I wanted to show this is we're thinking about which course, which university subject area is the right option. You can kind of, I think, divide the thought process between two different angles. One is vocational and the other is subject passion. Perhaps the most numerous question that I receive from parents in particular is, and students, but especially parents, is how will this university course help with the next step in terms of securing an exciting career afterwards? What's the return on investment actually like? And it's a really complicated question when you think about it, because there are so many factors. I would say that there are two different directions and thought process. One is vocational, as I've mentioned, and the other is subject passion. So if you have a specific career in mind where you need a degree, so for example, if you want to be a medic, you'll have to study medicine at some point. If you want to be an architect, you'll have to study architecture. But then on the other hand, there's also subject passion, and that's less clear because it's not necessarily a specific career in mind at the end of that degree. So let's say that you have a student who is very, very interested and passionate in history, but they won't necessarily want to become a historian as a professional career in the future. So on the one hand, we're looking at the subject choice because you're passionate, but you're not necessarily thinking about the career at the end. And then the other hand, where you have a certain goal with a career, and so you have to do that particular university course area. What not necessarily everyone thinks about is, I would say it's more important to find a high quality institution in terms of university and be passionate about what you're doing versus following a course but not necessarily having that passion. So no matter the course you're doing, I would say that if you're at a high quality institution and you're enjoying what you're doing, those transferable skills with your course should help you find an interesting job and career. For example, I remember speaking with a parent actually rather recently, and she studied media studies if I remember correctly, and she is now working in the United Nations doing something entirely different to media studies. So she used those transferable skills and networking, perhaps when she was at university, as stepping stones to find her, I think, dream job working in the United Nations. So it shows that it's not always so clear. There's this concept of the squiggly career as you find what you want to do. Well, if we look at the table, vocational and subject passion, if we look at all of the ticks and the crosses, if you're choosing the best fit course, you have to have passion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be vocational, is how I've broken it down. So if it is vocational, if you want to be a medic, and you love medicine, of course, so you've got the subject passion and it's vocational, that's potentially a good fit option. If it's vocational, let's say that you maybe want to be an architect as an idea of a career, and so it's vocational, but you're not deeply interested and fascinated in the subject itself. You have an idea of the career, but you don't necessarily enjoy what it involves to study, then it's perhaps not a good fit. So it's a little table anyway to help you think about identifying the right fit and whether it's down to being vocational or a subject passion or both. So here we have another resource from the book, this time looking at the breakdown between extracurricular and supercurricular for what students can do outside of the classroom. I should start by saying when you're choosing your university course area and you're choosing the institution you go to, there are slightly different concepts and models around the world. So if you're aiming for the UK, quite often you will choose your subject very early and pursue that subject for the vast majority of your undergraduate career. So if you choose to do biochemistry, for example, at university, then the 99%, roughly 90% and upwards of your course will be biochemistry. There may be the option of having an extra module in a different subject area, but generally speaking, that's what you'll be studying. If you're looking at another institution in a different country, such as the US, with their liberal arts and sciences model, you'll be maybe choosing a major and a minor, so you'll have your subject preferences as you progress throughout your undergraduate studies, but you'll have to most likely study a range of different subjects because they have a sense of a broad curriculum, developing skills, and then later choosing what you want to do. So the extent to which you have to demonstrate your passion for your subject does slightly vary depending on the country you're choosing. But I would say both supercurricular and extracurricular experiences, no matter where you're studying, where you want to go for university, are both hugely important. So anything a student does outside of the classroom, I would put under the umbrella of co-curricular. Then underneath that, it branches off into supercurricular and extracurricular. Supercurricular is the academic things that you do outside of the classroom which relate to your future university subject area and passion. So let's say that a student is very interested in computer science and wants to study that at university. For a supercurricular activity, so it's academic and outside of the classroom and linked to computer science, they may listen to a podcast that's related to computer science. They may study Python and other languages. They may participate in an essay competition where the topic has to do with computer science. For extracurricular, that's the non-academic things that you do outside of the classroom. So for example, the same computer science applicant may well have an interest in a particular sport, may play a musical instrument. All of those are really important. If you're aiming for North America, I think they put a slightly larger emphasis on extracurricular. Of course, both are important, but there is a slight nuance and difference in how these are weighted. They like to see commitment over a long period of time with a particular passion that you may have. With the UK, there is a huge emphasis because you're choosing your subject very early, going back to what I mentioned of whether you're specializing at the beginning or you're later choosing what your passion is, so you have a broad portfolio of interests and subject passions and abilities. So with the UK, for example, many G5 institutions recommend that you should have between 70 and 85% of your UCAS personal statement containing supercurricular activities. So there's a lot that you should be doing outside of the classroom to show that you're passionate in your particular subject area. There is still a need for some extracurricular to show that you are a rounded candidate. If you're applying for other destinations where maybe you don't have to specialize immediately with your subject passion, then there's a little bit more of a weight placed on extracurricular activities to show that you have teamwork, leadership, interests that you can add to the social fabric of the institution where you join. So both are important in terms of supercurricular and extracurricular. It's worth understanding the differences and thinking about where you want to go to then place the weight on how much supercurricular and extracurricular you're going to have in your timetable, in your portfolio. In fact, just to help a little bit with the supercurricular profile building, I have a table here, or figure, with some tick boxes. And actually, if you use the QR code, you can download a nicely graphic designed version of the figure from the book, from the website, and you can use that as a PDF, print it out if you'd like, and tick through to make sure that you're doing a range of supercurricular activities. So we can see online courses, wider reading, podcasts, documentaries, a range of different things that you should be doing. For a UCAS personal statement, I would recommend that there are 8 different supercurricular activities, and there should be a variety. So we're not just looking for 4 books and 4 competitions. We're looking for a nice broad range of experiences. So next, looking at career trajectory and how to establish and maintain your own career journey. I would say the importance of work experience actually can't really be overstated. I think everyone should experience the world of work, and also to see if your particular subject area is a good fit for you. To give you an example, I remember working with a student a few years ago when I was based in Oxford, and she was deeply passionate in the subject of law, and was quite confident that she wanted to study law at university. And she did a few supercurricular activities, and it came time to do some work experience in year 12. And she secured a week with a local law firm. And a few days in, she came back to see me, actually not so happy, a little bit upset, and realised that the work that she was doing actually was not really that interesting for her. There was a huge amount of paperwork, and in her words, some of it was a little bit monotonous. And having spoken to some lawyers who were working there, she began to realise that the idealised version of being a lawyer, watching a few TV shows and films, looked quite interesting for her in terms of maybe the lifestyle. She realised the subject itself and the studying and what it actually involves in the real day-to-day world of being a lawyer was not actually a good fit for her. Luckily, fortunately, she was doing the right A-levels already, and she decided to pursue a career in medicine, and is now just about probably in her last year, I think, to be studying medicine at the University of Cambridge. Developing supercurricular pursuits, that's of course just linked to what I mentioned a moment ago, a range of activities really important to find best fit and to help with university application strategy. Developing and maintaining networks is something which is lifelong, and there was a stat which came out about 2 years ago, I think, which mentioned that 23%, I think it was, of students surveyed in the UK secured their first job based on a link that they had with their school work experience. So just to say, it's worthwhile maintaining and continuing to build professional networks within the sector to open up opportunities and to snowball into contacts leading into other contacts. Self-marketing is really important. I would encourage all students to think about creating a LinkedIn profile and of course updating their CVs, keeping that CV regularly updated. Actually at Cardiff Sixth Form College, Cambridge, with all of our students who complete their studies with us in year 13 when they go on summer, so just before they go to university, they're technically still our students, I deliver LinkedIn masterclasses and workshops to help students create their profiles and hopefully continue to post and stay connected with us online. Graduate schemes are also worth thinking about. Going back to what I mentioned of vocational versus subject passion, let's say that you are a historian, not necessarily thinking of doing that as a career, but using the transferable skills of critical thinking, research, debating, and so on. There are lots of companies who visit universities and offer opportunities where you can start your career with them, learning as you go and progressing quite fast through graduate schemes. So I would recommend to check which companies visit the institutions that you're potentially looking at applying to. What sort of links does your university have, and how could that potentially help you find your future career? So you might be wondering what universities are actually looking for. So they'll be interested, if we look at the 6 boxes on the screen there, they'll be interested in your previously achieved and predicted grades. There may be some separate assessments, so it's worth looking into that, whether you have an admissions test, for example. There will be some form of writing for the majority of universities, not all. There could be a personal statement or a Common App essay. Some universities, especially in Europe, require having a look at a CV, sometimes in Asia as well. There could be some shorter questions required as well, especially in North America, when you look at supplemental essays. The My Cambridge application, so I think it's actually only the University of Cambridge where they have this. You have the usual personal statement, but there's also an option later on to submit a new form of writing, specifically about why you're interested in Cambridge, why you're interested in the course you've selected. There could be other forms of supporting documents required, for example, references, recommendation letters from members of staff at your school and others who know you. And there could also be interviews and different stages of interviews as well. There are a couple of universities, again, especially in Europe, where they may require some interviews, pre-recorded videos, to be part of your application. So have a look which institutions you're interested in, and I would recommend to write a list of what they actually need and put that into a nice timetable so you can stay on top of what's required. So how can you prepare? I would say identify your best fit. What are you looking for? And I've got some criteria on the next and final slide to help you with that. Continue to engage in co-curricular activities. You have to work in parallel. You have your academic studies. Simultaneously, you need to be developing your portfolio of supercurricular and extracurricular activities. It's important to do both at the same time. And ensure, of course, that you know what the deadlines and requirements are and that you meet those in order to have a successful application. As you're looking at your best fit institution, it's not just about the course itself, but it's also the location and what the university has to offer. So on the screen, you'll see a few bullet points to help you think about what those factors may involve. So thank you very much for attending today's video masterclass, and I wish you all the very best for the next steps of your future, whether you're a student or somebody supporting students.